June 23rd, 1986. A cornfield outside Enos, Indiana. A farmer named Michael Kins climbed onto his tractor at sunrise to till the soil for a new planting season. The ground was soft, too soft. When the blades turned, they pulled up a hand, then an arm, then the bloated, beaten face of a man who had been one of the most feared killers in America, Tony Spilotro. 48 years old, 5'2". The Chicago Outfits man in Las Vegas, buried 5 feet down in his underwear, next to his younger brother Michael, who was 39. Both men had been beaten so badly with fists, feet, and baseball bats that the coroner counted dozens of separate impact points. Their skulls were caved in, their ribs shattered. And here is the detail Martin Scorsese cut from Casino. The detail that made even hardened FBI agents stop talking when they read the autopsy report. There was a corn cob lodged in Tony Spilotro's throat, stuffed there while he was still breathing. This was not the cartoon Joe Pesci played. This was not the wise-cracking enforcer with the pen scene and the comedy timing. The real Anthony Spilotro was something far worse. A man who once put another man's head in a workshop vise and tightened it until his eye popped out of the socket. A man who ran a burglary crew so brazen they cut holes through the roofs and walls of jewelry stores in broad daylight. A man who skimmed millions from the Stardust, the Fremont, the Hacienda, and the Marina casinos, while the bosses back in Chicago counted their cut in suitcases on Grand Avenue. And then a man who got greedy, got sloppy, got slept with the wrong woman, and paid for all of it in an Indiana cornfield with his brother screaming beside him. This is the story of how a kid from the west side of Chicago became the Mafia's eyes in the desert, how he built a parallel empire of jewel theft, contract murder, and casino skim that ran for 15 years, and how every single thing he touched eventually killed him. But here is what the movie never told you. Spilotro did not die because he killed too many people. He died because he embarrassed the men who made him. And in the outfit, embarrassment was the only sin that mattered. Anthony John Spilotro was born May 19, 1938, in Chicago. His father Pasquale ran a restaurant called Patsy's at the corner of Grand and Ogden on the near west side. Patsy's was a meeting place. Sam Giancana ate there. Paul Ricca ate there. The bosses parked in the back lot and discussed murder over veal parmesan while little Tony bussed tables and listened. Pasquale was a working man, not a mobster, but his restaurant was the lunchroom of the Chicago outfit. By the time Tony was 13, he knew every face that mattered. By the time he was 16, he had decided he wanted to be one of them. He was small, 5'2", maybe 5'3". On a good day, he compensated with violence. By 1955, he had his first arrest for stealing a shirt. By 1962, he had graduated to armed robbery, purse snatching, and shaking down independent bookmakers who refused to pay tribute to the outfit. The man who noticed him was Sam DeStefano, Mad Sam, a loan shark and torture specialist so deranged that even other killers crossed the street when they saw him coming. DeStefano took Spilotro under his wing in the early 60s and taught him the trade. This was Spilotro's apprenticeship. DeStefano's basement on the northwest side. Ice picks, cattle prods, workshop tools used in ways no carpenter ever intended. Tony learned that pain was a language, that fear was a currency, that a man would tell you anything if you took your time. In 1962, 2 small-time hustlers named Billy McCarthy and Jimmy Maraglia killed 3 maid guys in a place called the Scotch Mist Lounge. The outfit wanted them found. Spilotro found McCarthy first. He took him to a basement on the west side, sat him in a chair, and asked one question: "Where is Maraglia?" McCarthy refused to talk. So Spilotro got a workshop vise. He clamped Billy McCarthy's head between the jaws and turned the handle. He kept turning until one of McCarthy's eyes burst from its socket and rolled down his cheek. McCarthy gave up Maraglia's name. They killed him anyway. Then they hunted down Maraglia and killed him, too. The bodies were dumped in the trunk of a car in Cicero. The press called it the M&M murders. Inside the outfit, it was Tony Spilotro's audition tape. He was a made man within months. Here is the thing you have to understand about the outfit. Chicago was not New York. There were no 5 families, no commission seats traded like Wall Street stock. There was one organization, one boss, one ruling panel. And by the late 60s, that panel was looking at Las Vegas the way a hungry man looks at a buffet. The casinos were printing money, tax-free, untraceable, off the books, every night. Before the daily count went to the Nevada Gaming Commission, suitcases of $100 bills walked out the back. This was the skim, tens of millions of dollars a year, splitting between Chicago, Milwaukee, Kansas City, and Cleveland. But the operation was fragile. It needed a watchdog. Someone in Vegas, full-time. Someone the bosses trusted. Someone scary enough to keep the casino executives in line and the local hustlers off the take. In 1971, the outfit sent Tony Spilotro to Las Vegas. He was 33 years old. He brought his wife Nancy and his adopted son Vincent. He set up a gift shop at the Circus Casino called Anthony Stewart Limited, which was just a front for his actual job. His actual job was to protect the skim, collect street tribute, and kill anyone who got in the way. For the first few years, it worked beautifully. Spilotro's childhood friend Frank Rosenthal, known as Lefty, ran the day-to-day operations at the Stardust. Lefty was a genius handicapper, the man who basically invented the modern sports book. Tony was the muscle, Lefty was the brain. The skim flowed, Chicago was happy. Joe Pesci's character in Casino, Nicky Santoro, is loosely based on Spilotro. Robert De Niro's Sam Ace Rothstein is loosely based on Lefty. But the movie smoothed everything down. The real version had more blood, more corruption, and a death count the studio would not touch. By 1974, Spilotro was bored. The skim ran itself. He wanted his own action, so he built the Hole-in-the-Wall gang. Here is how it worked. The opportunity was simple. Las Vegas jewelry stores in the 70s had alarms on the doors and the windows, but almost none had pressure sensors on the roofs or motion detectors in the walls. A man could literally cut through the side of a building and pull every diamond out of the display case before the security company sent a patrol car. The inside connection came from Spilotro's gift shop. Tourists left their hotel rooms, came to buy souvenirs, and casually mentioned what they had upstairs. Spilotro's wife, Nancy, ran the register. The shop functioned as a low-key intelligence operation. By the time a wealthy guest left the casino floor, Spilotro's crew knew which suite, which jewelry, which night the room would be empty. The execution was crude and effective. The crew, usually 4 to 6 men led by Frank Culotta, would arrive at a target after midnight. They would cut a hole through the wall or the roof, not the door. Never the door. They would empty the safe or the display cases, sometimes carrying out $40,000 to $50,000 in merchandise in under 20 minutes. Then they would walk away. The money was extraordinary. Between 1974 and 1981, the Hole-in-the-Wall gang is estimated to have stolen more than $10 million in jewelry, cash, and rare coins. Spilotro fenced most of it through contacts in Chicago and Los Angeles. He kept maybe 40% for himself, paid his crew, and sent a piece back to the bosses to keep them quiet. But here was the problem. Spilotro was not supposed to be running burglaries. The outfit had sent him to Vegas for one reason: protect the skim, stay invisible, do not draw heat. And every break-in, every jewelry score, every dead body in the desert added another FBI agent to the file on Tony Spilotro. By 1979, the Las Vegas FBI office had a full-time squad assigned to him. They called it the Spilotro Squad. They followed him to lunch. They followed him to his car. They photographed every meeting at the upper crust pizza place where he held court. The outfit started getting nervous. The phones started ringing. Joe Ayupa, the boss in Chicago, was hearing complaints. Tony Accardo, the elder statesman, the Joe Batters himself, was hearing complaints. Tony Spilotro had become a magnet. Everything he touched lit up on a federal wire. He ignored the warnings. Between 1979 and 1983, the body count in Las Vegas exploded. The FBI estimates Spilotro was personally responsible for or ordered at least 22 murders during his time in the desert. Some were rival hustlers. Some were informants. Some were just men who had insulted him at a bar. Marty Buccieri, a casino pit boss, was shot in the head after Spilotro suspected he was talking to investigators. Sherwin Lisner, a witness in a federal case, was found in his swimming pool with 10 bullets in his body. Each killing brought more agents, more warrants, more wires. And then Spilotro did something the outfit could not forgive. He started sleeping with Gary Rosenthal, the wife of his best friend, Lefty. You have to understand the rules. In the outfit, you do not touch another made man's wife. You do not touch his sister. You do not touch his daughter. Lefty Rosenthal was technically not a made man because he was Jewish and unable to be inducted, but he was the outfit's most valuable earner in Las Vegas. He was the man making the skim possible. And Tony Spilotro, the bodyguard, the watchdog, the friend since childhood, was having an affair with Lefty's wife in a condominium across town. The affair started around 1979. By 1980, Lefty knew. By 1981, the whole town knew. And by 1982, Chicago knew. October 4th, 1982. Lefty Rosenthal walked out of Tony Roma's restaurant on East Sahara, got into his 1981 Cadillac Eldorado, and turned the ignition. The car exploded. The bomb had been wired to the starter. By every law of physics, Lefty Rosenthal should have been dead within 2 seconds. But the Cadillac had a metal stabilizer plate under the driver's seat that General Motors had installed by accident on that model year. The plate absorbed the blast. Lefty was thrown clear, burned but alive. Nobody was ever charged. Inside the outfit, everyone knew Tony Spilotro had ordered the hit on his own friend, over a woman. That was the moment Chicago decided he had to go. They just had not figured out when. The FBI was closing fast. In 1983, Spilotro was indicted in the M&M murders, the killings that had made his career 21 years earlier. Frank Collada, his hole-in-the-wall gang leader, had flipped. Collada had been at Tony's side for over a decade. He had robbed with him, killed with him, eaten dinner at his house. But Collada had learned, through a federal informant, that Spilotro was planning to have him murdered. Spilotro thought Collada was a liability. Collada found out and went to the FBI within 48 hours. Collada's testimony detailed every burglary, every meeting, every murder he had witnessed. He named names. He named dates. He gave the FBI the architecture of the entire Las Vegas operation. The trials began. Spilotro beat the M&M murders charge after a hung jury. He beat a hole-in-the-wall gang racketeering charge after another mistrial. He was Teflon in court. But every acquittal made him more dangerous to the bosses, because every acquittal meant more press, more attention, more agents. Joe Aiuppa watched the news every night and saw Tony Spilotro walking out of a federal courthouse smiling. And Joe Aiuppa was already under federal indictment himself, charged with the very skim Spilotro had been sent to protect. In 1985, the entire outfit leadership went on trial in Kansas City for the casino skim conspiracy. The case was massive. The wires were devastating. Aiuppa was looking at the rest of his life in prison. He was looking at his organization being dismantled by a federal jury. And the prosecution kept saying one name over and over again: Spilotro, Spilotro, Spilotro. The order came down in early 1986. Tony Spilotro had to die. So did his brother Michael, who had moved out to Vegas and gotten involved in the family business. Michael was the younger, quieter brother, a dentist by training. A father of 2. He had been doing some loan sharking and minor enforcement work, but he was not Tony. He was collateral. The setup was simple and devastating because it came from inside. June 14th, 1986. Tony and Michael Spilotro were back in Chicago. Tony was facing a new trial. He needed to consult with his lawyer. They were staying at Michael's house in Oak Park. That afternoon, a man Tony trusted, a senior figure in the outfit, called and said there was going to be a meeting. Tony was being promoted. He was being made a capo, a captain. It was a peace offering. The bosses wanted to bury the hatchet. Michael was being made, too, a father and son ceremony, in a way. Bring your brother. Tony believed it. He should have known better. Every made man knows the rule. When they invite you to a meeting and they will not say where, you are not getting promoted. You are getting buried. Around 4 p.m., the brothers told their family they would be back for dinner. They left the house in Michael's car. They were never seen alive again. The exact details of what happened next come from later witness testimony, particularly the trial of outfit hitman Nicholas Calabrese, who turned government witness in 2007. Tony and Michael were driven to a basement in Bensonville, Illinois, a suburb west of Chicago. They were led down the stairs expecting their induction ceremony. What they walked into was at least 10 outfit soldiers, crew bosses, killers, men they had known for decades. The door closed behind them. The Spilotro brothers were ambushed. They were not shot. The bosses wanted them to suffer. They were punched, kicked, stomped, and beaten with bare hands and feet for what investigators believe was several minutes. Michael fought back. Tony reportedly begged for his brother's life. He said, "Let my brother go. Kill me." They did not. They beat both men until they stopped moving. Then they stripped them to their underwear, loaded the bodies into the trunk of a car, and drove them across the state line into Indiana. The chosen burial site was a cornfield owned by an outfit associate off a remote stretch of road near Enos in Newton County, Indiana. The grave had been dug in advance. The bodies were dumped into the hole. Dirt was shoveled over them. And then something else happened, something that did not make it into Scorsese's film. According to law enforcement accounts that emerged later, when the dirt was being thrown over the bodies, Michael Spilotro was still breathing. He had survived the beating. One of the killers reportedly grabbed an ear of dried corn from the field, broke off the cob, and shoved it down into Michael's throat to silence the gurgling. Some accounts say the same was done to Tony. The autopsy noted vegetable matter consistent with corn cob in the airway of at least one victim. The coroner ruled the cause of death as asphyxiation due to blunt trauma and burial. In plain English, they were not dead when they went into the ground. Scorsese filmed the scene with the brothers being beaten with baseball bats in a cornfield and buried in their underwear. That part is accurate. The corncob detail was cut. Studio executives reportedly felt it was too grotesque for audiences, so the movie ends with bats. The reality ended with a man choking on the earth that buried him. 9 days later, the farmer's tractor turned up the hand. The fallout was immense and immediate. The Las Vegas operation collapsed within months. The Kansas City skim trial ended with convictions for Joe Ayupa, Jackie Cerrone, Joey Lombardo, and Angelo LaPietra. All of them received sentences ranging from 12 to 28 years. Lefty Rosenthal, badly burned but alive, left Las Vegas forever. He moved to Florida, ran sports betting websites in his later years, and died of a heart attack in 2008. Nancy Spilotro, Tony's widow, lived quietly until her death in 2020. Their adopted son, Vincent, later became a doctor and changed his last name. Frank Collada, the man whose testimony brought it all down, lived under witness protection until he eventually came out of hiding and made a living giving mob tours of Las Vegas. He died of complications from COVID-19 in August 2020. The man who actually committed the murder, Nicholas Calabrese, finally talked in 2007 during the historic Family Secrets trial in Chicago. He named names. He admitted his role in the Spilotro killings and over a dozen others. He gave the FBI the blueprint for the outfit's entire hit operation, going back to the 1970s. Several aging outfit bosses, including James Marcello and Joey the Clown Lombardo, were convicted of racketeering and murder, including the Spilotro hits. And here is the part the movie never gets across. Tony Spilotro did not die because he was a killer. Everyone around him was a killer. He died because he became a problem. Because the heat he generated cost his bosses tens of millions of dollars and decades of their lives. Because he could not stay invisible. Because he could not keep his hands off his best friend's wife. Because the same ego that made him useful at 24 made him radioactive at 48. The outfit did not bury Tony Spilotro for being evil. They buried him for being inconvenient. That is the real moral of the casino story. Not gambling, not Vegas, not even loyalty. The Mafia does not punish cruelty. It rewards it, right up until the moment that cruelty draws too much attention. Then it disposes of the man as efficiently as it created him, with a beating, a cornfield, and 5 feet of Indiana dirt. Tony Spilotro spent his life trying to be feared. In the end, he was just buried. If you found this story fascinating, hit subscribe. We drop a new mob documentary every week. Drop a comment. What Mafia figure should we cover next?